Oh, that's tasty.
What's up everyone? Welcome to Make It Tasty. My name is AJ and I thought it would be a super fun idea to put some polls out there, not that kind of poll, on Instagram and Facebook to see what I should make this week. Either a fruit tart or a French macaron. Not a macaroon, macaron. I made macaroons, so be sure to check out that video if you want to see that. Macarons won by storm, so let's make it. As you will see here, this is everything we need for this recipe. We've got almond flour, confectioner's sugar, eggs, we're only using the whites here, granulated sugar, salt, vanilla for the flavoring, cream of tartar, and some blue coloring because I want these to be a lovely blue. The first step I'm gonna do in this recipe here is I'm going to measure and sift out my almond flour and my confectioner's sugar. For this recipe, I'm using a cup of almond flour, as well as 2 cups of confectioner's sugar. Okay, I'm just gonna use a little whisk and I'm going to mix these into my sifter and make sure it all gets nicely pushed through there. Any lumps that are left over, get rid of them. You don't want them in your batter. Awesome. So now that this is done, I'm just going to set this aside and we're going to move on to our eggs. So I'm using 3 eggs. Again, I'm only using the whites here. An easy way to separate a yolk from a white is simply tap it on your counter. We can't be having any shells in here. Gently with the egg vertical, lift half of the shell off, let the white fall into the bowl, and then simply transfer your yolk back and forth from shell to shell, letting the egg white fall out. If you get any yolk in here, these are not going to beat up, so please be careful. Another method is to simply pour the egg into your hand, slightly open your fingers, not much, just slightly, and then transfer the yolk back and forth, letting the white fall between your fingers like that. Now that our egg whites are in our bowl here, I'm gonna put it in my stand mixer. I have the whisk attachment. If you do not have a stand mixer, I know they're pricey. You can use a hand mixer and a bowl. Just make sure the bowl is very, very clean. I'm gonna mix this for just a couple minutes on high speed until it gets frothy. And don't worry, I will show you what it looks like. Little thing I didn't mention before, your egg whites really need to be at room temperature here because if they are not, again, they're not gonna beat up as well or as quickly as they would if they were at room temperature. So when your egg whites are frothy, you'll see they've gotten this foamy consistency here. At this point, I'm going to be putting in some cream of tartar, which is a binding agent that is also going to help these egg whites beat up because we will be going to meringue consistency here. 1/4 teaspoon of that in there. I'm going to turn my mixer back on. While my mixer is on, I'm going to slowly pour in a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar as well. And then we're going to turn this up to high and let it beat for a few minutes until it gets thick, stiff, glossy peaks. I will show you once we get to that point. Awesome. So this is what it's like when you have glossy, stiff peaks. It's going to stand straight up like this. This is meringue consistency, which is what you need to have your egg whites at before we add the rest of the ingredients. If you are adding flavoring, I will be adding vanilla today, just a teaspoon. Also, if you're adding food coloring, this is the step where you want to add this in before we do the almond flour and confectioner's sugar here. So I'm going to add in my vanilla. And I'm also going to add in my food coloring. Make sure you add in a bit more than you normally would because once you add the rest of the ingredients, they're going to get pretty pale. Perfect. And if there's some food coloring along the side of the bowl, don't worry. Get the rest of that with a spatula. At this point, the way you mix this batter is crucial. We're going to pour half of this in there and we're going to gently fold it. I'll show you my technique. And then we're going to pour the other half in, fold it, and you want the consistency to be like molten lava, like you'd see in a volcano. If you undermix it, it'll be too thick, they're going to crack. If you overmix it, it's going to be too runny and they're not going to rise in the oven. So pay attention here and be careful. Half of my confectioner's sugar and almond flour mix here. And then you just want to very carefully fold everything together. I'm going to add the other half here. And now we're going to fold until we get that lava consistency. Now this is our lava consistency. You can see it's very slowly running. Do not mix it anymore once it gets to this point, because that is when you start to overmix and they're not gonna rise. So stop once you get here. Don't worry if you don't have this, not a big deal. I will say though, a silicone baking mat is very important. It helps them bake evenly and it helps them get off. If you use parchment paper, which yes, will work, you just need to be cautious because they might stick to it. What you can do is use a gallon size Ziploc bag. A round tip is pretty important here. It's a 1/2 inch round tip. If you don't have one but have a piping bag, don't worry about it. I'm going to just put my macaron batter into my bag and I'm just going to simply pour this in here. And now we pipe, so I'm just gonna pipe into my circles here. And if you don't mind spending the money, I would recommend one of these mats because again, we are making little cookie sandwiches out of these and this just helps each one come out exactly the same. These are about 2-inch circles that I'm piping here. Another very, very important step is to let these sit at room temperature for 30 minutes. The reason you do that is because it'll allow each one to form a little skin on top. So when we bake them, they're gonna maintain their shape and simply rise and puff up rather than spread out. So 30 minutes and then we're gonna bake them off. These have been resting here for 30 minutes, so I'm now gonna make these at 300 for 30 minutes and then we will just let them cool and fill them up. My macarons took 30 minutes exactly in my oven at 300 degrees. I then let them sit and completely cool to room temperature before trying to lift them off of my silicone. You need to do the same because you'll risk them sticking and breaking them. So as you can see, these rose up really, really nicely. This is why it's important to let them sit for 30 minutes before we bake them so they can get this shell and maintain this nice little shape here. Now when it comes to putting something in the middle here, you can put ganache, buttercream, fruit jam, a number of things in the middle of these because they're really a vehicle for whatever flavoring you want to put. I have recipes for ganache, buttercream, and a few other things on my channel a while back, so go look for those. I'll have the links for those down below as well if you want to make them and put them in the middle here. If you enjoyed this video and this recipe, please give it a thumbs up and share it to your friends if you think they would like to know how to make these as well. Leave some comments down below and let me know what you think, as well as hitting that subscribe button so you can join me next Friday for another amazing recipe. And remember, if you're gonna make it, you better make it tasty. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.